My name is Michael Welsker,
I'm Jason Schroeder.
and this is a presentation that Jason and I gave about how the NFL media production workflow works and what they've learned along the way for building a new facility. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like to design a facility from the ground up for workflows that you haven't run yet?
Yeah, so I'm a pragmatic engineer. I design what's the best tool for the job. I don't have a specific dog in the fight. I always go with an open mind on what can work, what doesn't, what fits a certain place, what doesn't. So when I'm building a facility from the ground up, it starts with the basics that we've all been dealing with, I think, our whole lives in this industry, which is how many cameras are coming in, how much media are we expecting, what's the turnaround time, what's the deadline, and then you fit all of those things into a technical picture and see if your budget can handle it. Can the budget meet the needs of this production? That's essentially what it boils down to, from a two-person edit and camera shoot to something much larger like we do at NFL Media, where we have hundreds of users and hundreds of systems running all day long. The same principle applies. Do we have enough resources and the right tech to apply to this production workflow? So,
as you're designing that workflow, we'll say it's like a 4 or 5 year process to go from the beginning to the opening. Right in the middle of that process, the world moved to remote workflows, right? The world entered a pandemic phase. Everyone started changing how they work. Can you talk a little bit about how designing the infrastructure changed to support what is now a very large remote workflow and virtualized workflow?
Nobody should be a stranger anymore to things that have been on the market for a while that have been very successful, like PC over IP, remote access to edit stations, things like that. So before I came on board with NFL Media, Brad Boehm and Eric Peters developed a all-remote workflow during the pandemic that involved Bebop and some other products that allowed them to basically move their entire post-production stuff into that service. But that was a pricey service, very successful service, and they really knocked it out of the park that year, but it was very expensive. So part of the impetus in this build was to take what they learned from that and then incorporate it into the new build. So essentially we rebuilt it ourselves internally, and what that implied in terms of what types of resources we could say we had when we were in a meeting, when someone said, how do you give us remote access to our equipment? Because you have to answer that. You have to say, this is how it's done. Is it secure? Is it set up properly to handle the daily work that we're doing? So we had to account for that. We had to account for it. For me, I am a bit of an introvert, so the pandemic didn't really change my daily life. I worked on this project in an office that wasn't really occupied for many years before we moved it into the Inglewood facility for final build out. So personally, I was still very much involved with the project, hands-on and on site, but I am thinking about how to make it something that is flexible, that can take either internal clients or remote clients inside of our production network. Because that's what it's about, right? We have a production network that we take care of, that we want to give access to externally. But that's a sensitive thing, right? It's a very sensitive, it's all our media, it's all that stuff, so you want to do it right. Yeah.
The two questions I have from that are the architecture of how the creatives who use that infrastructure changed pretty significantly for them. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how the decision-making process works on the infrastructure side, and then maybe talk us a little bit through the infrastructure that you built and how those workflows can flow through?
Yeah, so I come from an art background. I don't have an engineering degree. I have a fine art degree. And I learned while I was in schooling that my real skill was going to a technological situation where the artists were somehow not able to get done what they needed because they didn't have an engineer on their side to get it done. I was that person. So anything that they had set up that wasn't functioning, I fixed and enabled them to do that. So I start everything with the user experience. What are we trying to give the editor? What does the user expect when they sit down to work? Because as a creative person, nothing is more annoying than getting interrupted. Before I drew this, or this is a part of a larger diagram, before I sat down to draw it, I sat down and stared at the wall for 2 hours, because you have to stew on things when you're creating. That is part of the human process. And whenever that gets interrupted, whenever there's an interruption to that, you're interrupting it and it has to start all over again. So I start with that. how does the user experience what I'm building for them? And then I go from there. So every statistic and engineering data point that we put into this project, again, this is a very broad overview of our storage, but it's much more complex than that. Every detail that went in was like, can the user use this? Is this something that they can cut the show with? And then does it meet our budget? Can we afford it? Not, can we afford it and then force the user to use it? I don't work like that. So that's how I develop things like this. So what this is a drawing of the flow of all of our data as we saw it from 50,000 feet up, and how we were going to accomplish this in a newsroom with hundreds of users and just, hundreds of feeds and all these ingest recordings and everything. And how do we manage that flow of data and successfully give it to those people and let them just do their thing and cut and make content? Like, that's what it's about.
So this is a thematic guide to your workflow, right? It's data flow, it's information flow.
Yeah.
The detail that's not present here is all of the infrastructure necessary to support that. On the other side of this build out, on the other side of this global transition that we went through as a result of the pandemic, how do you see production engineering as having changed kind of from the beginning to the end?
Yeah, so everyone has been on an adventure at some extent of the world of production network engineering. And I'm not talking about 2110. I'm talking about supplying network resources of any type to engineers and creative people versus email and calendar people. So the IT world and the production world have always kind of struggled. And admittedly, over the past 20 years, we've seen NAV transition over a lot of different technology that merges those things in ways that engineers love and IT people hate, and we make them do it. Mm-hmm. So in this specific adventure, the third component that really brought it all together was the relationship between corporate IT, broadcast engineering, and network engineering. So a lot of the components that we put into this build required someone who truly cared about their network, how it functioned, how the data moved around, and how we were going to make it resilient enough with the money we had to accomplish the goal. And that's what I found on this project, and it's one of the reasons why I joined the NFL, is that their IT and network engineering teams blew my mind. I got to say, this is what I want to make in this environment, and they said, okay, here's how we're going to do it, and this is the best way to do it, and the most secure way to do it, and I got to play in that space. Up until the NFL, I had been recommending, as an integrator previously and as a studio worker previously, had been recommending these policies over time as someone who has learned the lessons in those environments, but I never got to implement them myself. So I went really deep on this. I do all of the domain permissions for this. I manage all of the security groups in the domains, all of the storage that you see here, except for at the bottom. This is all stuff I take care of. It could call me at any moment. I really invested myself in taking care of this environment for those people, but I could not do it without those qualifying people in other departments in our company that care also about engineering. So what that takes is, as an engineer, you always want those IT people to care about your needs, but engineers never go to IT and say, how can I make your life better?
That's right.
That's what we have to do. So I did it on this job, and it turned out great. I got a big, fast network, I got a lot of great storage, and I'm having a great time. So.
And you do that in a very collaborative way with the other divisions and departments in NFL.
Couldn't do it without them.
Right.
They are a necessary component to it.
So if you have that kind of relationship with your peers in your organization, something that is similarly implied here but not represented is you have dozens and dozens and dozens of tools, right? You have vendors like us who are part of that relationship. Can you talk about how that relationship works for you, like the value of that interpersonal relationship, similar to how you talk about it internally?
Let's talk about, because it hasn't been addressed yet, the detail of this drawing. So what this is a high-up overview drawing that I made for our internal company to pass around when anybody said, well, what kind of storage do we have and how does the data move around? It's not meant for highly technical people, it's meant for everybody. And we have some storage over here handling the daily ingest and things like that. But what we needed in this project were some things that I see as missing in a lot of engineering production projects, and that's handling the daily grind of the core team that is handling the media. So our assets and our high-res files and everything exist and operate over here. Where OpenDrives came in, they are the centerpiece to our media admin operation. So all the files that come in through Signiant, all the files that come in off camera cards, all of the things that they are developing in the media administration department, and it is a deep directory, lives here. All of our user profiles for FS logics. So when our users move around from machine to machine, their data follows them around, it's just folder redirection fancy mode. That all lives here in OpenDrives. Our media asset management system is Arvado Vitaspine, which is right nearby. It's a very great man. It works really well. And that rides a Git repository on our OpenDrives as well. So one of the challenges we had is they needed a share that the Git repository would just work, that they could publish to, because it's basically their configuration backend. We don't publish it to the cloud. It's live close by because we're a big, busy news environment. I hate latency. I love the cloud. I hate latency. So I'm the type of person that puts it close by. So we put it up here, and that's where the Git repository lives for our Arvado system. Arvado sees all of this, and the way that our data moves around is there's a big thing here at the bottom with the cloud logo on it. See, I have a cloud in my thing. See the cloud? I don't deal with this at all. This is another department in the NFL, but everything I deal with, the end of the road is there. So the MAM that overlays this whole thing, that talks to this and talks to this and operates from this, and my main clients are my media administration department, operate out of here. It all finally makes its way to our master library, which is a digital content library managed by someone else, and I never have to do any engineering about it at all. I just API stuff to it. Mm-hmm. So this whole picture right here, this is the necessary component to keep it all going.
And so you work with your one of the things that you mentioned earlier internally was the way that you work with your network teams to make sure that not only does this all keep going, but that it's seamless. And so there's a collaboration effort, not just in the tools, but in the people.
Yep. So
can you talk a little bit about the collaboration effort?
Yeah, specifically to OpenDrives. One of the things that I was given as a directive in this project was to remove as much fiber channel as possible. Used it a lot in the past. It's very dependable. I built big fiber channel networks. A lot of people have. They're fun. But the expense isn't worth it. The knowledge base is slimmer and slimmer. So people naturally want to move towards Ethernet. But there are some workflows that are so dependable at a block level that they're kind of sketchy about it. So when we got into this project, one of the things that OpenDrives brought up to me that I had no idea about was SMB multi-channel. And we have leveraged it completely so that our network, AB network, is fully redundant, doesn't require any special network knowledge to configure. SMB multi-channel is a baked-in protocol to Windows, so if you're in a Windows environment, it doesn't take anything to set up. It's really easy. And when it's enabled on this, on my OpenDrives, it doesn't matter if one side of my entire A network can go down. Everyone can still find the storage. My entire B network can go down. Everyone can still find the storage over SMB 311, which is now our expected protocol. We do use block level in some of our workflows. I'm not a one-size-fits-all person. But when it came to designing this resiliency into this product, this was the company that introduced me to a new idea, something I didn't know, something that nobody else seemed to know or want to put into their stuff, but meant the world to me because now I can take one side of my network down without having to worry about XYZ happening. I do with some of my other systems.
I appreciate hearing kind of your approach to how you solve this problem, how we help you solve this problem. One of the things that we feel very strongly about, because it's where we came from, is supporting the creator. And I know that you've told me in the past, your mission is to make sure that the creator can create. So you work as hard as possible to get the tools and infrastructure and things out of the way, right? Any sufficiently developed technology is indistinguishable from magic. And if the creator can get into that creative space and stay there, then you're successful, right?
Yes. Yeah.
As we look back on this, are there 2 or 3 key takeaways that you would say, if I were to do this again, I would start here, and this is an item I would think about as I move forward?
Yeah, so we did a lot of testing and spent a lot of time analyzing different systems and how they behaved and what our final expectation was for the new facility. And there aren't a whole lot of things I would do super differently. We hit the mark on a lot of things. It doesn't always happen. Some projects are good, some are bad. This one turned out really good. So the things that I put into place are eventually going to be replaced by shinier, newer things, but my approach is still going to be the same. The way that I plug something in or a placement into this is still going to be the same. And most importantly, when I do that, is that device coming with, I really, it's strange, but the only way I've been able to describe it to large groups of people is a Star Trek ethos. Am I helping my fellow engineers build something cool? Is it a collaborative effort? Or are we fighting each other? And I find the Star Trek ethos vibe in this company. When I went to the demos and I saw how much they cared about the end product, I felt that. That was what I enjoyed about it. So that's why I invested time in it. And when we rung through everything that we did in those labs and everything that we worked through, it gave us genuine results that we could bank on, that we could do work with. You know, every company here, every last booth in this building and every last one down the street has had an issue with something at some time. What matters is what they do about it. And I am here because they do about it.
Thank you. And I think that comes from the alignment of ethos, right? Is making sure that we're taking care of the people who are relying on the infrastructure.
Yeah, like I was, admittedly an SMB noob, saying, hey, hey guys, how do I do this better? And they're like, have you heard of this? I'm like, no, you need to use it. Not, well, I didn't get attitude that I didn't know about it. I got encouragement to exploit a new technology in a way I had never thought of before. A simple one that was recorded and I think at the time they told me about it, already 8 years old or something like that. It was an old protocol. So you gotta, I'm an open book engineer, and that I like to talk about the things that didn't work for me as much as the things that did, so that other engineers don't have to relearn the same lessons. Again, that collaborative effort where we're all on that same starship together, building that same journey. So that's had a lot to do with that process and how things got inserted into this project.
Excellent. Thank you.
Well, what is the best thing about working alongside OpenDrives, and how does it help you facilitate the needs that the NFL have with the data capacity?
Yeah, totally. So I don't mind enterprise storage relationships, but I come from creative post-production relationships and offering a personal experience. Support comes in all different ways. With OpenDrives, I send an email to the support, get a response right away, and engagement. I don't have to log into a website and remember my site ID and talk to a chat bubble and then get an email that is a form email that's very well written, but it's a form email and that person has no idea who you are. They're gonna help you, but you're gonna get fixed, but it's not personal. I've been working with the same team since I bought in. I remember coming to see them before their website was even done, and the same people that I interacted with then are the same ones that have to deal with me now.
So for you,
That's a joke. That's a joke. You can laugh at that.
for you, speed to response,
Yes.
attentiveness, technical accuracy,
Yes.
empathy,
Care. I
and-
care. Yeah.
and care.
Yeah, care.
And of course, outcome.
Yeah,
right?
look, I used the garden analogy earlier, right? It's not a joke. If you have a facility, you're providing power to it and it's producing for you, you're just an electron farmer, right? So you got to care for it. And I like partners that care. And that's what I found, Again, not a single booth here without a history of some kind solving a problem. Not one. The response is what matters. I have worked with companies before where I said, hey, that feature you sold me didn't work. And they said, well, you're the only one using it, so good luck. Guess who I don't go to anymore for storage.
Jason, thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate you spending some time here to talk about your workflow and your accomplishments.
Thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. If you have any questions, come on up and ask. Find an OpenDrives person with an OpenDrives logo, and we'll answer any questions you have.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for your time.